Hey there, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Fantasy for the Ages, the show where a father and son talk about fantasy, science fiction, and other nerdy things that we enjoy. Glad to have you with me today. I don't have my son with me today, although you just saw him in the pictures, and he reminded me just recently, you may have seen the episode already, that I need to update those pictures. Those are over a year old, and we have seen each other more recently than that. So
Yeah.
I'll be working on new entry pictures, but we don't need Zach today because we have frequent flyer guest Spencer from the Fantasy Files podcast with us again. Good to see you, sir. How you doing today?
I am doing good. It's been kind of a wild morning, and I was a little bit late to this, but yeah, I'm doing okay.
And now that you're here, the fun can begin.
That's right.
And we are actually doing this on December 30th, so it's still 2023, but we are on the cusp. The
Mhm.
cusp of new things.
Hanging on by a thread.
There you go. And let's enjoy our time here today. We're going to be talking about another book that we've both read. You much more recently than I, because you
Mhm.
read this one on my encouragement and challenge. The Furies of Calderon,
Mm.
the first book of Jim Butcher's Codex Alera, 6-book epic fantasy series. And I knew you liked Jim Butcher because, I mean, the Dresden
Yeah.
Files, it's top Butcher there. This is different. This is not urban
Yes.
fantasy. And so we'll have some fun talking about this. But those of you watching here, this is full spoil today as we talk about book 1 of this series. Spencer hasn't read the rest yet. I
Mhm.
have. I'm going to hope he'll read the rest at some point, but the whole book 1 is fair game. So if you have not
Yeah.
read this, go read it first. Again, I would encourage that, and you can find other content on it, spoiler light, here on our channel. But here now, we're going to totally mess with this book. So don't stick around if you haven't read it yet. So, general impressions. What did you think when you read this book?
Yeah, man, it's such a mixed bag for me. I think I liked it. I didn't love it. And I think that I put this book off for a long time for two reasons. One, the audiobook is narrated by Kate Redding, who I typically don't like. And so that was kind of like, oh man, I'm gonna have to like listen to a whole audiobook of that. But then the other one was because, having read all of the Dresden Files multiple times, in my head, in my like perspective, I'm like, man, Jim is just really good at first person single POV. And so to move from that to not only a whole different subgenre within fantasy, but also third person multi POV, I was like, ooh, like, can he do it? And I think that I think that I was like, yeah, he can. It's not the best that I've ever read as far as like that specifically goes. We just talked about We Break Immortals yesterday, where
Mm-hmm.
each POV feels so distinct based on their inner thoughts and how each character views the world. And this just felt pretty standard. It wasn't bad, it wasn't amazing. So I think that at the end of the day, it's like, yeah, Jim can do it. And I'm sure that he gets better in the later books and it gets more engaging and whatnot. And I'm definitely eager to read the Cinder Spires books if these turn out to be really good. And then I was pleasantly surprised by Kate Redding. I didn't have any problems with her at all in
Oh,
this one.
good, because I'm not a Kate Redding basher. I have enjoyed her, especially in The Wheel of Time, but I've heard her in a few other things too, and I have no problem with her. So yeah,
Yeah,
good.
for sure. I don't know what it is about her. I don't know if like I think there's just books that I've heard of hers where all the like the same character will have like a completely different voice from chapter to chapter, and I'm just like, what is this the character I thought it was? Or and so that's I don't know. She's just not a favorite of mine.
Okay.
I wouldn't say like I hate her narration, but it's always like, oh, I'd just rather listen to someone else. But as far as the book goes, I thought that it was fun. I had a good time with it. I liked the Fury crafting. I thought it was interesting to see how they use these Furies in such different ways. Um, I think going into it, I was under the assumption that the Fury was like a pet that was always kind of with them and they could like converse with it and whatnot. And from the first book, it doesn't really seem like it's that way. Maybe it changes in later books, but in the first book, it didn't really seem like they had a magical connection with their Fury, but it wasn't this bond, this like companionship kind of thing. And so I think that's kind of what I was expecting. But what I liked about it though, was that rather than being a companion, it is a magical source and they can direct their magic through it. And that's very similar to one of my favorite book series of all time, the Fallen Blade series by Kelly McCullough. And they have like these companions of various elements, and that is more of like a companionship, companion bond, but they also like direct their magic through that companion's magical link. And so I thought that was pretty cool. I liked all the different ways that they used magic. It was interesting to see that Bernard's Fury, he was able to change people's like emotions, or like when him and Amara are kind of getting into it and she's like, you're crafting on me right now. And so it's kind of interesting to see how he can like influence people with his earth crafting. And then with
Yeah,
the
you notice
water,
there were multiple uses of each type.
yes,
So earth
yeah,
crafting, he could obviously do things with earth, but
right,
as you're saying, he can have an impact on how people feel.
right. And there was even a moment where like I can't remember who it was or like what the situation was, but there was a moment earlier in the book. I think it was when everything was happening with Cobb, where like at the beginning, where somebody was like walking across a room and then they stubbed their toe because somebody like lifted up the earth a little bit to like catch them to stop them from moving forward. And so little stuff like that was really cool. Just these really like kind of odd little uses, as well as the big magic uses. And then you have like water crafting that can heal people. We see Odiana at the end, like basically heal everybody, which I have some thoughts about, but like she's able to heal people with her water crafting. And so I thought that was pretty cool. And then also, oh man, the scary part of the water crafting, I think it's at the beginning with Amara, when Amara first realizes that Odiana isn't like this little slave girl. Doesn't she like fill her mouth or something with water, or like her throat with water? So that happens to somebody, and I'm like,
So
man,
you
that would,
could basically, yeah, you could basically suffocate a person that way, drown them
yeah,
right there. Yeah.
right, yeah, that would be terrifying. So I thought all that kind of stuff was really cool, and I'm like, I bet in the future books, like there could be like some really interesting uses of this magic system. So
It's one of the best parts of the story, the
yeah,
creative magic system. You know, you could say it might borrow from various other
sure.
fantasy tales and stuff, but he's done something in his own unique way with it. And the other element that, of course, is a fascinating part of this story is one of our primary protagonists, Tavi, has no magic. He can't do it for some reason. And
Yeah.
it's this big mystery. Why can't he?
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of wish, for I think if you're going to have a character with no magic, there has to be something else that is really interesting about him. And I don't really feel connected with Tavi yet. I wasn't really endeared to him in the first book, and I'm sure that'll change. Like he seems like a character that is going to grow and, be more involved in things. But I feel like this was kind of like Amara and Bernard's book more than anything. I don't know if other people feel that way, but I felt like they were kind of like the main stars of this book.
This is
And
really a foundational book. And
yeah,
similar to
100%.
Butcher's style in the Dresden Files, there's a lot he's laying out here that you don't realize what he's going to do with it yet. It
Sure.
becomes clearer as we move through the series.
Yeah.
Um,
I
and
just
so
think
to feel like this was Bernard and Amara's book, I can totally understand why you see it that way, or why
mhm.
it feels like that. There will be much more that he'll do with that,
Oh,
but
definitely, yeah.
also I can tell you in book 2, the world opens up
Okay,
massively.
cool.
We spent a lot of time in the Calderon Valley here and
Yeah.
adjacent places. Um, it will always have a place in the story, but
Yeah.
it's going to get so much bigger already starting with book 2.
Yeah, I hope so. Because I think my biggest problem with this book, and like I don't want to just bash the book. There's a lot of things I liked, and we'll talk about them as I go through like some of my favorite moments and whatnot. But I think my biggest issue with the book coming out of it was like, it was so localized that everything, and this happens in a lot of fantasy. This isn't unique to Codex Alera, but I felt like it was so localized and some of the enemies seemed so small that by the end of the book I was like, okay, so what is the goal of the series? Like when we got to the end of the first book of the Dresden Files, I felt like I knew what the rhythm was going to be like. I knew kind of like what we were doing in the grand scheme of things. We have this wizard who's doing various investigations, and we get some hints that there might be like a bigger evil at play and whatnot. And I really like, unless I completely missed something, I really feel like we didn't get anything like that in this book, because we had Cobb, who is like a hometown just jerk and just awful person, and it's like, okay, he's
Cord. I
probably,
think you're meaning Cord.
oh yeah,
You said
Cord,
Cobb,
yes,
but not.
Cord,
I think
yep,
Cord's who you're talking about. Yeah.
right, yep. And Cobb is from King Killer. Um, and yeah, so Cord, he's the kind of enemy you see and you're like, he's gonna die by the end of the book, or something's gonna happen to him. Like he's kind of like the low level bad guy. And then you get this knight who I believe his name was Aldruin. Let me see, I have it in my notes here. Aldrich. Aldrich. Does that
Yeah.
sound right? And so you have Aldrich, who's kind of this swordsman, and then Odiana, who's kind of his girlfriend type person, and they're both like really crappy people, and especially Odiana, she's a complete psycho. But I think at this point, I don't really know how they fit into everything, excuse me, in the grand scheme of things, because I'm like, they don't seem like the high level bad guys. They seem like the mid level bad guys. And so I'm like, okay, so what's the next step? And I felt like I left the book in enjoying everything, but not knowing at all where it's going to
There's
go from
so
here.
much I want to tell you, but I can't because there's a reason Butcher has done it this way. And
Okay.
I want to call you on something here that I think you don't realize even.
Oh, please do.
When you talk about book 1 of the Dresden Files, I think
Yeah.
you're looking at it too rosily.
Okay.
You're too influenced by the rest of the series, and
Right.
you've
That's
read
fair.
these multiple times,
Yeah.
and it's too hard to really look back at it like you did the first time you read it,
Right. Yeah.
because
That's fair.
there's a lot of people when they try to read the Dresden Files, they can't get past book 1. There's just
Right.
not enough to it, and they hate Harry Dresden, and
Yeah.
and there's stuff in there that you just don't realize what it means yet.
Right.
And that's the same thing happening here. It is very localized, very small scale, and there is a huge reason for that you don't know yet, and you can't know yet, but
Right.
it's integral to the rest of the series. So
Right.
you
Yeah.
I gotta say, you like Jim Butcher, you gotta trust him enough to keep going and
That's
believe
fair.
you'll understand why book 1 was the way it was.
Yeah, I definitely want to keep going, because at the end of this book we get Tavi. He's been granted a full patronage, and he's going to the academy and whatnot. And so I think that's probably Would you say book 2 is where it would really pick up and you would start to see things kind of rolling, or is that more of like a book 3 thing? Because I feel like book 2 is going to be the one that gets moving, but maybe I'm wrong.
No, it definitely gets moving in book 2. Yeah,
Okay.
it does. But every book goes another level in this series.
Right.
Every
Yeah.
book gets bigger all the way through to the end, because it's a progression. And
Yeah.
you mentioned, okay, so Tavi has this full ride. He's going to the academy now. His dream. That's what he wanted to be able to do.
Right.
So the second book is going to be him at the academy.
Yeah.
And the world opening up from there, because he's not in the Calderon Valley anymore, and he's progressing. And the story will progress as well, as we get to see more and more of what's going on. There are things behind some of these characters that you had in this one that are going to be huge later, but you don't have enough context yet.
Right. Yeah, that's awesome. I really hope that I think the second book, hopefully it'll just getting out of the valley and seeing kind of like what else is out there. Like, I think something that would hook me in this series is seeing how other cities or regions or whatever handle the Furies. Like, is there a region where people without Furies is the norm and people with Furies are like distrusted? Or is there a region where like everybody uses their Furies for this one specific thing, or like for like architecture or war or something? And so I'm interested to see how all of these things are kind of organized, because I never saw the show Avatar. Did you ever watch this like with your kid or anything?
I did not.
So it's like you know what it is though?
The last Airbender thing we're talking about, right?
Yeah. You do?
I'm generally familiar, yes.
Okay. Yeah, because they have like all these, there's like the water region, there's the fire region, there's like air and some other element, I forget. But they all have like different elements and they all use their magic in different ways. And I remember in that show, from what I did watch, it was really interesting to go to each place and kind of see the different ways of life. Like, all of the waterbenders lived very peacefully and kind of one with nature and that kind of stuff. And then you go to the Fire Nation, and it's all about like war and stuff like that. So
you are going to learn more. You're going to get much more of the world as we move forward. But you already do have a clue in one aspect in this book. And that is, we do have interaction with another nation, sort of, in this book, with the Marat.
The Marat,
who, they view a certain way, and maybe they're not viewing the Marat not giving the Marat as much credit as they ought to,
Sure. Yeah.
But the Marat don't wield Furies. And that wasn't a thing there. They had something else going on.
Right. Yeah,
but
right.
They weren't Fury wielders. So that's a hint. Okay. That's something, a nugget that you have.
That's cool.
And
yeah, I really liked all the Marat stuff. Like, as soon as he got captured and got sent to that place, you have this guy who's kind of pulling him before the council, and you're like, oh man, they wanted to like eat him or something. And and he's like the guy, I have his name written down somewhere.
Droga?
Droga, yeah.
I love Droga. He's just awesome.
Yeah, he turns to Tavi and he's like, so you're gonna come before the council and they're gonna find you guilty and they're gonna eat you. However, he says it more slyly. He's like, and they're gonna eat you because nobody else has contested it yet, or something like that. And Tavi's like, can somebody contest it? And he's like, somebody can contest it. And Tavi's like, can I contest it? And he's like, he just kind of like looks at him and like turns away, and he's like, let's go. And so Tavi's like, oh, okay. So he just gave me a huge hint. And then this whole trial thing was so much fun with Katana or Katai, yeah. And yeah, she was awesome. You didn't even know that she was a girl until well into the trial. And so that was kind of a fun revelation, and Tavi's
and then that thing that went on down there in the forest. What did they call that place? The Valley of Trees, the Wax Forest.
Yeah, it was
That
like a bog.
There was something interesting down there. And that's another one of those things where as you keep going through the stories, you're going to realize what happened there is more significant than you know.
Okay. Yeah, you might have to remind me, because I remember that was the point where they like became kind of, maybe not friends, but they became like teammates, and they like protected each other in that moment. But it's been about a month now, so I can't quite remember exactly what the big battle was down there. But I
I
remember
mean,
there was
he
some
had a
sort of
task.
clever.
He had to get into the center. They both had to try to get to the center of it to get a special object to bring back. And he's the one that manages to bring it back. She ends up wounded and like is gonna die.
Right.
And he saves her life right there at the end.
Right.
But there are
Okay, yeah.
things after them that like they woke something up that's coming for them now, and this is bad.
That's right. Yes. Okay, I remember this now. Yeah, so that'll be interesting. That's a point I remember when I read it. I was like, oh, that's cool. I could see that coming back later. So yeah, but I liked their relationship. You can tell that she's probably going to be at least one of the love interests or something, because Daroga says at the end there, he's like, oh, you guys are so funny. He's like, my wife and I were the same way.
Him. She
Yeah.
hates him with a passion.
Yeah.
Passion.
But,
yeah.
So yeah, I'm excited for that. But yeah, let's see, what else did I like. I really liked the intro of Amara and Fidelius.
Yes.
Man, that was so cool. Like, they were kind of undercover, and then there was like twist after twist after twist, and you know, they like get captured, and they end up in this room where I think one of them is in a cage, and one of them has like earth covering them or something. And then it turns out that Fidelius is working with the guy that brought them in. So the whole thing was this
Traitor!
big scam. Yeah. And yeah, then Amara escapes, only to be caught by Odiana. And then Odiana is revealed to be like not a slave girl, but this more powerful like water witch kind of person. And that was really interesting. I was like, oh man, there's like a lot going on here. And I love that scene. The one downside I have to it is I wish that, and maybe it will in future books, but I wish the rest of the book had kept up that pace, because starting in such an awesome moment where it's just like thing after thing after thing happening, and all these twists and intrigue and stuff. And then the rest of the book, it had some of that, but it didn't keep up that same that same high the whole time, I guess.
Well, something I'll tell you to look forward to is twists and intrigue.
Okay.
It is a huge part of the rest of the series. So you got some of that here, but again, it's
Nice.
foundational stuff.
Okay.
And there are things you know because of this book now that you don't really know. Because what you think you know isn't always what you know in this series. And that repeats again and again in some really amazing ways. That makes it a lot of fun. You should just keep working your way through. But you said something way back at the beginning about your opinion of this book that I have heard others say as well. It's a good book, not necessarily a great book. That is not a inaccurate statement. I think a lot of people would agree with you on that. I enjoyed it.
Sure.
But is it up there in my best of all time type books? No. Right. It's a fun fantasy ride for these 6 books. I had no problem reading them all and enjoying it. Am I going to reread them? Probably not. You know, but they were totally worth my time. There was a lot of goodness in them. So enjoy a good series, but it won't be one of your favorite of all time. You know, and you may never say it's great.
What would you say the later books kind of not that they need to get to that like amazing level, but would you say that each book consistently kind of ups
I
the
believe
level
so.
of enjoyment?
Not
Yeah. Okay.
everybody necessarily agrees with that. I
Okay.
found it that way. The stakes get higher, the world
Mm,
gets bigger, uh, and you've got growth that I don't want to say more about because it's too
sure.
spoilery.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you've got some logical growth going along. Honestly, I think you might enjoy the series in a way because it has some parallels to Harry Potter. And I know how much
Oh.
you loved Harry Potter. The way some of these characters are going to continue to grow, develop, take on new challenges, do things, in fact, that there should be no way they're capable. They don't have the training for this yet, and yet they will find a way and overcome. There's a
Right.
lot of Harry Potter-esque-ness to it, which, of course, it leans into pretty heavy when the next book, Tavi's at
Is
school.
at an academy. Yeah.
Yeah. So
That's
I think
awesome.
you'll see those parallels.
Very cool. What did you think of, and especially with you having read the whole series, what did you think of Amara and Bernard?
I I liked that. I appreciated, that
Yeah.
they seem to bond there. There's a kinship. There's definitely a little bit of spark.
Yeah. I was going back and forth on it like every other sentence, because there would be some things where I'd be like, "Oh, that was like really cute," or that was like whatever. But but then I realized, I think, and I don't know if I'm correct in this, but at the beginning of the book, I thought that Amara was like Tavi's age and that
Mm.
Bernard was like way older. So maybe they're like closer in age than I thought, but I was like, wow, that's like a big age gap.
I I think Amara is somewhere in between the two. Bernard
Oh,
is
okay.
definitely older than Amara, but
Okay.
Amara is not close to
Tavi's.
Tavi's age. He's
Okay.
young, whereas she has just finished academy. This is uh,
Okay.
her final test was to go off with Fidelius on that mission. And
Right.
completing
Okay.
that mission, she was going to graduate as a full cursor. That's a
Okay.
whole process of having gone through the academy, many different levels and years to get to that point. So what
Okay.
Tavi's going to go start next year, next book, she
Is what
is
she
all
just
the way
went
at the
through.
other end of
Okay.
it. And it's not
Got it.
like a 4-year term necessarily thing. I mean, it's a process.
Okay. Okay.
Plus, you don't go to the academy necessarily at the same age. It's not like, oh,
At
Harry, it's your
18, you
birthday.
could.
It's time to go to
Yeah.
the academy. No, it's not
Right.
like that. They
Yeah.
come
Yeah.
at different points. So,
Okay.
yeah, I get, and I saw it too, thinking maybe this was going to be like a romance thing. And oh, no, no, that's not where it goes. But she is definitely much older than Tavi is.
Okay, yeah, yeah. Because when she first showed up, I was like, "Oh, like Amara and Tavi would be like the love interests or whatever." But yeah, I was really surprised when she started making out with Bernard. I was like, "Wait, what?"
That
So
lech.
yeah, but like, yeah, there was also moments where I'm like, I really like this, so I could really go either way on it. I just thought it was kind of funny.
Yep. Yep.
Um, let's see. I liked when what was it, Disana? Was that her name? Disana, who was saved with Odiana. There's so many names that sound so similar.
Isana.
Um,
So the
yeah,
Bernard's sister you're talking about,
yeah,
right? Yeah.
yeah, and she gets saved from Cord by the kid being like, "I'm done with this," and he like opens up the roof to get her a little bit of water to use in her water crafting, I think.
Mhm. Mhm.
I really liked that scene. I thought that was really creative and fun. And then it was really satisfying at the end when Cord's whole body is completely broken and Disana kind of saves. She like gets Odiana away from him, and she just like leaves him for dead basically. And he's like, "No, you have to." And he's trying to get her to kill him because he know it'll be like a quick swift death.
Mhm.
And she's like, oh no. She's like, you won't be able to poop on your own ever again. Like you're not even able to sit up ever again. She's like, I'm going to leave you right here, and whatever happens, happens.
It was
She's like,
righteous justice.
yeah, she's like, you'll get pulled in front of the court, and you'll get a trial, and they will not look kindly on you, and you will wish you were dead. And then I think at the end, it's the Marat that get him, right? I think it's when Odiana and Aldrich and all them are walking away,
Yep.
and she's
You are
like healed
completely
everybody
right.
else. And he's like laying there. He's like, wait, heal me too. Like, take me with you. Take me with you. And she's like, oh, and he's like, no. And Aldrich even like just like steps on his hand, and they walk away. And I loved, it was mentioned at the end too. Like he steps on his hand and he walks away, and he uses his wood crafting to like bring up a wall, so he doesn't even have to hear him like yelling anymore. And then the next thing they know, they just hear like these blood curdling screams coming from the other side where the Marauder just tearing into him. And I'm like, oh man, I love some good cowboy justice like that. For sure.
All right. So what I am hearing from you is there are lots of elements of the story you did enjoy.
Yeah.
You had questions. There are things you would have preferred were a little different, but a lot of the elements you appreciated. Some story moments that, hey, that was good, and things that you are hoping there will be more of than you had in this book.
Yeah.
And I think you will be happy as you continue based on those
Yeah.
questions and those wishes, because the story goes in really positive directions if that's what you're hoping for.
Yeah, for sure. And for everybody watching, I don't want to come off like I was like bashing the book or anything. I'm just being like critical of the things that I did
Absolutely.
and didn't like. And I think it's got it's clearly obviously not Jim Butcher's like debut novel or anything, but it's clearly the first in a series. There's a lot of stuff that's getting set up, and some stuff that I was kind of left being like, I wish, like, I know the idea is to leave enough mystery for me to be like, oh, I want to know more, but I feel like it went just under that, to where it's like the mystery is more like, I feel like I just didn't get quite enough. So I'm eager to try the second book and see if that is like actually like what I wanted from this book.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I definitely want to go on to the second book and see what it's got in store. So
Yeah. The second book I think will grab you.
yeah.
There's a definite shift, and
Okay.
it tightens up a little bit on what its focus is really supposed to be, and a little more moving forward.
Yeah. A little
A
more
little
like
less
definition.
of things that seem irrelevant. There's a little less
Okay.
of that. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool.
All right. So
Sweet.
you don't need to be prompted. You're going to go ahead and move on, is what I hear. You
Yeah.
will
Yeah.
check
Yeah.
out the rest of
Definitely.
the series.
Definitely. Yeah. Especially with, everything that kind of, that like Gaius, he like hands out all these titles and all of these different roles to these different people, and at the
Mm-hmm.
very end, and I'm like, I'm eager to see where that goes. I'm eager to see like what happens with Bernard becoming a count, and Desana becoming Steadholder. I think that's the
Yeah.
title.
Yeah. A
Um
woman can't do that. Well, a woman
yeah.
is, because Gaius just made it so.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm eager to see like where these characters go. I'm not necessarily completely attached to them yet, but I could see that kind of like blossoming into something. So definitely want to give the rest a try for sure.
And what I will look forward to is your, how do I say this? The revelations that will be coming.
Yeah,
Because again, there is a lot more going on in this book than you realize at this point.
for
Because you just
sure.
don't have enough information, but you're going to get
Definitely.
it. And then you're going to understand, oh, there was subtext. Okay. Gotcha now.
Yeah, I mean, I've always said, you do a reread of the Dresden Files, and
There's so much.
you
Yes.
you go back to the first book and it's like, whoa, like there was way more there than I thought there was. And whether
Totally.
that's Jim Butcher doing that like retroactively or all planned from the beginning, I don't
I think it's
know. But
both. I think it's
yeah,
both.
I think it's a little bit of both. But I definitely, yeah, he definitely hides some like Easter eggs and whatnot in the first books. So
Yep.
I'm sure there's a lot of that going on here. So
But we are still a Jim Butcher fan. And
oh
there
yeah.
is, I mean, it's his writing here. There is still the way he, and you're going to see more of his writing style similar to the Dresden Files as the series goes on. The
Okay.
way certain characters interact with each other, the way they banter, the
Okay.
conversations, if it'll feel more familiar.
That's cool.
At least that's how I felt. And I enjoy that style of writing.
Yeah,
So
100%. Have you read
and it'll
Cinder
be interesting.
Spires?
Neither of us have done Cinder Spires yet, so
Okay.
it'll be interesting to see, does that carry over there too? It's on my
Okay.
list. I'll be getting to it, but
Yeah, let me know when you do. We can all read it at the same time. I'd be down to
I
do
think
that.
it's buried a little on my list still. I don't think it's on my
In your
2024 reading
thousands
plan
of
yet,
books list.
Yeah, so many books, so many books.
Oh god.
All right. Any last
Cool.
thoughts? Anything else you want to say about Furies of Calderon?
No, I think I got it all out. I think I liked
I think you nailed it. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I liked I think I liked a lot of stuff. We've already talked about it. There was stuff I liked and there was stuff that I'm kind of waiting to see, but overall, I'm eager to go on to the next one.
So again, those of you watching, if you are a fan of fantasy, of epic fantasy, of Jim Butcher, check out this series. And I definitely recommend you do at least the first 2 books before deciding maybe I don't want to keep going. Because I think the first one is very foundational. The second one really starts you going on a true journey of knowing where this series is headed. And at that point, you have enough information to know, is this going to be for you or not? But really, this first one, it's a fun little adventure story.
Yeah.
But there's so much you don't realize yet. You really should at least go through the second book. But check it out. It's recommended by Fantasy for the Ages, at least. And while you're checking things out like that, don't forget to check out Spencer's channel, the Fantasy Files podcast. I've got a link down there for you in the show notes, so it's easy to click and find out what they're all about. A lot of the same kind of content that Zach and I talk about. We have similar interests, but not identical. So you'll find some things they've got there that we haven't touched yet. A lot of things on my TBR are Spencer's fault.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So take a look there. And where else besides YouTube? Where else can they find you, Spencer?
We're on Twitter. Our handle is @FilesFantasy, or if you just look up Fantasy Files Podcast, we'll probably come up. And then we have a Discord server, which is linked in our Twitter bio and all of the descriptions for our videos. You can click on any one of them and find most of our links in those descriptions. And then we have a Patreon where we put exclusive content on. It's usually just Gabe and I hanging out. Sometimes our other co-hosts join us for a little bit of a chat about just anything in life. It's not even necessarily fantasy related. A lot of fantasy stuff comes up, but we go wildly off topic. We play games, all sorts of stuff. It's a ton of fun. So our Patreon is a great place if you'd like to support us, and the lowest tier is $3, and that gets you all the exclusive content and everything.
There you go. Yeah, Spencer is a big gamer. I did learn the other day.
Yeah.
He can listen to audiobooks while gaming. I can't even process that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks again for being here. This has been fun as always. And all
Thanks
of you
for
for watching, thank you so much. We'll talk to you next time.